So, ladies and gentlemen, we now officially open the policy outlook for EU agriculture and the CAP. We're moving now into the Agricultural Outlook Conference for our first session here. This is very much an open dialogue to talk at that very high policy level of what is happening, what could happen, and what your thoughts are. And we heard Commissioner Hansen very clearly say that he is from a family farm. He is part of that environment. And I just wonder, as a quick show of hands in the room, if you could raise your hand for me if you are from an agricultural family. And there we go. So I think wonderful. If you raise your hand as well for me, if you are still very much in touch with that family farm and the decisions made. Yes, look at that. Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and I know that watching us online, there'll be a great many more people with their hands raised wherever they are watching us from. Let's see who else is in the room. Raise your hand for me if you are here as part of a policy organisation, something to do with policy. Okay, lovely. Thank you. We have a lot of people in policy. What about research? Lovely. A lot of researchers. Let's move into academia as well. Maybe it's research and academia together. Wonderful. What about if you are an independent advisor? Welcome. There is a fair smattering of you. You're not the only one. And if you would consider yourself, when you introduce yourself, you are a farmer. Welcome. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here and indeed watching us online as well. This is very much an open dialogue now where we want to hear all your views. And to do that, as well as hands up, we're going to bring in Slido as well. So what I would like to do is we're going to give you a QR code now for Slido, hopefully on the screen behind, so that you can all get it. There we go. Fabulous. So if you'd like to get your phones out for me. And incidentally, you can see the hashtag there. So if you're posting on any social media, please do use that hashtag. Now, what we would like to do is sort of see how you are feeling this morning as we start the conference. Maybe after the welcome, the opening speeches, you have some thoughts in your mind. So we are asking you on Slido, in the room and online, what are your expectations for the next few days? What are your key expectations? What do you hope to talk about or hear or discuss? What could it be? Let's start to see some of your answers. So, what are those key expectations for the day? What have we got? Maybe you very much want to talk about regulations. Maybe you just want to meet people. Actually, if we now could show, I can see that we've got the word cloud. If we can see that on, there we go. Oh, I think, no, I don't know about you, but I'm going to need more than a translating set to see that. Nope. I can see the big word is networking. Wonderful. I can also tell you that growing there is information, sustainability, meeting and exchanging. There we go. Fabulous. Preparing the future. A future vision, practical solutions, networking. All right, quick raise of hands again. Who in the room has already met someone that they hadn't met before and they're really pleased to have made that new connection? Look at that. I should be sending you out of the room at coffee break time, and when you come back in, I want everyone's hand up. Wonderful. Okay. I tell you what we'll do. We've got another word cloud, but I think I'll move that one. I'll save that one for later. Something else I wanted to show you is our graphic recorder, because everything that we talk about on stage, our graphic recorder, Valerie, will be making amazing pictures of it. So I'm hoping we might now, and hopefully it's the right way round, be able to see what she has done so far. So she's drawing away in the background with all our ideas. Can we see Valerie's? Oh, so she's just starting. There we go. So this, oh, can we see it on the big screen? Lovely. So she's just beginning to start, and I think it's a live picture at the moment. So she's got her vision going on there. I tell you what, we'll have a look at that at the end of this session and see what ideas are already on there. This is going to be a very challenging session because we are trying to bring together all the key themes that you have already heard about. So we heard particularly from the Commissioner his thoughts on administration, also demographics, gender equality within farming, of course climate change, getting the fair deal for farmers, everything to do with the future vision of agriculture. And as we've heard, the new Commission will present that roadmap within the first 100 days. So what would you like on it? What would you like to talk about? What would you like those conversations with all those policy people to be around? What I'd like to do now is welcome our guests to the stage this morning. You can start to ask questions whenever you like, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions to guide this session. I'm going to keep it as open as possible. So please welcome our guests. First of all, Member of the European Parliament and Chair of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, please welcome Veronika Richkonova. Thank you, Veronika. Thank you. Do come and take a seat. Come take a seat. Thank you. We have, very pleased to say, the Hungarian Minister of Agriculture. Pleased to welcome István Nagy. István, thank you very much. Thank you. Do come and take a seat. The Director General at the Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development at the Commission, Wolfgang Butcher. Wolfgang, please come and join us. Thank you. We also have the Chair of the Commission. Good morning, welcome. The Chair of the Commission for Natural Resources, Carsten Uno Peterson. Carsten, thank you. Thank you, Carsten. Thank you. Come and join us. The Director for Nature, Health and Environment at the European Environmental Bureau, Faustin Bas-Dufusne. Faustin, thank you. Thank you. Welcome. I'll get out of your way. Wonderful. And finally, the President of COPA, Massimiliano Giacenti. Would you like to come and join us? Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, what a panel. Amazing to have everybody here. It's an open panel to ask whatever questions you would like. You can already start using Slido to throw questions into the mix. How are you all? Good? Ready? Fabulous. Make sure you've all got a microphone. What I thought I would do is run along the line, if I may. We've heard priorities from various people already. I'd like to know what your priorities are going forward. Veronika, may I start with you? So literally just a couple of minutes from all of you, if I may, just so the audience has an idea of where you sit. Thank you.
Tak, dobré. Já budu mluvit.
I will be speaking Czech. So first of all, I would like to extend my greetings to all of you. But before I answer your question, for which I thank you, I would like to thank the DG for organizing this event and for inviting me in this role of the chair of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development of the European Parliament. The first question is the most important one, priorities and goals. I think we can all agree on priorities. We have to realize that the new programming period
Odehrávat nebo
is a period that is starting in a very different context to the year 2018. We have the Russian aggression in Ukraine, which has a huge impact on agriculture. And of course, we have climatic disasters. And all of these things create a very different framework for the common agricultural policy. I think we can agree on that. We have price differences often caused by administrative burden, which varies in different member states. What I mean is the differences in income of agricultural enterprises. We need to change the system. We need less bureaucracy. This was mentioned, and we'll come back to that as well. A generational renewal, the access to soil for young farmers. Mr. Hansen spoke about that as well. And of course, risk management. These are things that we cannot agree on. However, now we come to the second point, strategic goals. I have to say that the conclusions of a strategic dialogue indicate a number of things that we can agree with. However, the vision of future EU agriculture, as included in the conclusions, can be in certain respects unrealistic, because the presumption is that in 10, 15 years' time, all challenges will be overcome, but there's no specification as to what we have to do in order for us to avoid compromises. And we will have to make compromises. So I think the strategic goal for us has to be the question: how do we find a balance between the economy, social problems, and the environmental policy? Thank you.
Very much tempering what you're hearing and saying there may well need to be compromises in 10 to 15 years, and it's still going to be difficult, still going to be tricky. Veronica, thank you so much. If I now move along the line, Istvan, would you like to give us your thoughts, your ideas?
Köszönöm szépen, nagy tisztelettel köszöntök én is mindenkit, és nagyon szépen köszönöm a meghívást, hogy itt lehetek ma a Mezőgazdasági és Halászati Tanács elnökeként, és részt vehetek a mai megbeszélésen. Az első legfontosabb dolog, amit szeretnék mondani, hogy mennyire fontos, hogy leküzdjük az akadályokat. Rögtön a nyelvi nehézségeket is. De gondolják el, ugye, már is probléma van.
Could you pardon just for one moment? I think we might have a problem with the translation. Does anyone else hear English translation? No. So what we just need to put English through to channel 2. Is it now sorted?
Can you hear the English booth? Test, test.
Apologies, and I think unless people are dual language English Hungarian, would you mind starting again for us? Thank you.
Szóval akkor jó reggelt kívánok ismét mindenkinek, és pontosan...
So welcome once again to you all. So as I was saying, we will need to face up to challenges, including linguistic challenges. There are 27 member states. We've different countries with different situations, different environments, and different economic situations. And it's against that backdrop that we need to work to help all EU citizens in order to have something to eat on their tables. So we're facing many challenges. There's the issue of food security. We have small member states, large member states, and in all those member states, all those farmers in those member states need to know that we're thinking of them, that we will help them, and that they should be able to live a dignified life. Now, the importance of today is that it comes at a critical moment. This is an opportune moment because we have time to listen to one another, including farmers. I agreed with everything Commissioner Hansen said earlier. This is a real time for reflection. It's also a time to express our thanks to all those who work for us. Thank you to the farmers who struggled, who work for us all in spite of all the difficulties. And I think that gratitude should underpin our work as we strive to overcome the challenges that we face. In my view, then, given my background as an agricultural engineer, this isn't just a profession, it's a way of life. It's easy to change professions. You engage in other training, gain some experience, and then there you go, you've changed work. However, you can't change a way of life as easily as that. The world is changing quickly. There's a transformation going on all around us, and all of that has an impact on our lives. So we need to face up to those sudden changes also. All reforms must bring farmers along with them. The farmers must be in agreement with the changes and reforms. So as I was saying, this is an important time, a critical time. It's important not only for us as political decision makers, but it's also an important time for farmers. And that's because I think that agriculture and farmers have maybe never faced so many challenges. There are climate challenges. We see the growing impact of the effects of climate change. And let's not forget that farmers face serious problems when it comes to profitability. We need to move away from an erroneous concept according to which farmers are the cause of political changes. I think they need to be part of the solutions. The green transition cannot run counter to the will of farmers. There's a need for farmers to want to undertake those changes, but we need to give them the necessary encouragement and instruments to make agriculture more sustainable. I take the view that that's the only way to reestablish the balance between environmental issues and sustainability. And I know that balance needs to be addressed. To guarantee profitability, there's a need for the CAP and adequate targeted resources in order to reach our many objectives. What we need is a distinct, independent CAP with 2 pillars in which there is direct aid for revenue, and that should play a key role, and also rural development measures in order to make rural areas more livable. We also need to speak about generational renewal. We need to help young farmers in taking over farms and facilitate access to land for young people. I'm proud to announce that at the Agri-Fish Council yesterday, with unanimous support from ministers, we adopted the Council conclusions on the CAP after 2027. These conclusions speak of all those ideas that I've just run through, and I think it constitutes a good alternative to the strategic dialogue report. It goes hand in hand with that. The conclusions also take into account the fact that the agreement was unanimous, and it'll be used to put forward our vision in the first 100 days. We need to work together to overcome the obstacles we face, and I think that we're all partners in this combat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. An absolute recognition at the beginning of how all farms are different, different sizes and in different locations, and how everyone has to come together. Can I take a couple of minutes from you, Wolfgang? Your priorities, your thoughts going forward.
Thank you very much. I would like to develop on 3 priorities, which partly have already been mentioned today: competitiveness, sustainability, and simplification. On competitiveness, I think a key element of competitiveness is that our farmers receive a fair income. And against that background, we have to ensure that we rely on all possible resources, making up a fair farmer's income, both from private and from public. From private, I think just 10 minutes ago, we have adopted, the Commission has adopted a proposal, Commissioner Hansen has already referred to change the CMO to improve the framework conditions for farmers in the value chain. We have to rely on sources that are to a certain extent new for farmers, stemming from the use of photovoltaic as an energy provider, possibilities in terms of carbon sequestration. So we need to rely, when it comes to the fair income, on quite a diversity of support. But we will also need public support for investments. We have an investment gap of 70 billion euros in Europe. Nobody questions that we should support areas with natural constraints. Everybody agrees that we need to pay and remunerate farmers for ecosystem services. And I think, as Minister Notch has just referred to, there will be also farmers that need income support. So I think this is a key priority for the future, to get it right when it comes to ensuring a fair income for farmers. On sustainability, environmental, climate, biodiversity-related issues, I think a big question, and you see it in the mission letter of Commissioner Hansen, in the political guidelines of the President, there is this reference to find the right balance, and you have referred to it, between legislation, regulation, incentives and investments. This is an issue which has kept us busy over the last 5 years, because we were not only faced with a new CAP, but also steady legislative proposals that were designing the framework conditions for agriculture, nature restoration law, pesticides. So we have to find out what is the right balance between legislation and incentives, because we can achieve objectives through incentives, we can achieve them through legislation, through investments, and to get it right is important. Secondly, still when it comes to sustainability issues, we have to draw our experiences from the rich potpourri that we have today in terms of ecosystem support schemes that member states have created in agri-environmental measures, in terms of ecosystem measures. And we have to look at those which are easy to implement, which have a real added value, so that we can also report about the progress that we are making. Commissioner Hansen has referred to this. I think I'm really convinced that the farmers in Europe, they make huge efforts for ethical reasons, firstly, to improve environment, climate and biodiversity. But I'm not sure that all these efforts are properly accounted for. So I think we really need to get better also in terms of accounting and monitoring our progress when it comes to the sustainability objectives. And a last point on the environmental sustainability, climate sustainability issues. There is a lot of talk about one size fits all is not the right solution. And I think this is really something which we have to take very serious, because the framework conditions for farming in different member states, the problems that arise, the deficiencies that exist and the opportunities that exist are very different. And this is why I think also when we are developing policies, we still need to maintain the common agriculture policy, but we also need to be aware of the diversity that we are facing in different countries. Now my last point on simplification. I think the framework conditions for simplification are not the best, because we always want to have targeted funding. We want to achieve that our public support is targeted, and rightly so. And we want to be sure that the money is properly spent. And under such framework conditions, evidently, simplification is not easy to implement. Nevertheless, we have no choice. We have to get to simpler rules, and we have to look at two levels. Firstly, what can we do at the farmers' level? How can we simplify their life? It is true that we are asking increasingly that they comply with eligibility rules to make the support more sustainable. It is demanding for farmers to do this, but still we will have opportunities, I think, there to simplify. And the second element of simplification is also relating to member states. Also here we have to work on a trust-based basis and try to improve our performance when it comes to administrative simplification with respect to our stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Wolfgang, thank you very much. Thank you. And if I move along the line, Carsten, a couple of words from you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will speak in Danish, so you had to have your earphones on, I think. Hvis vi skal løse
If we are to resolve this agricultural crisis in a sustainable way in Europe, we have to lessen the social inequalities that we see. So we suggest to rebalance the payments under the cap to small and medium-sized agricultural farms. It is important to have many farmers and many young farmers instead of very big farms that are difficult to hand over. And in order to stabilize the income for the farmers, we have to look nationally and internationally because without success on the market, the agricultural sector cannot attract young farmers. The farmers need fair and stable prices, and those working in the agri-sector also need good and fair wages. And none of this can be done without market regulation and solid rules for international trade. Also, we think that we can't overcome the crisis in agriculture by downgrading the green policies or by withdrawing what we've promised in the farm to fork strategy. If we turn away from green measures, this will in the long term ruin the agriculture. Agriculture must be supported in the transition, and that's why the CAP budget has to be supplemented with more resources. The Council confirms the need for European region to have a central role in the implementation of the agricultural policies, and their role in EU decisions has to be extended. And by activating the second column, we can adjust to regional characteristics and do more with less. The regional and national authorities are deeply involved in agricultural development. They need access to public services and infrastructure. If our rural regions are not offered good living conditions, it will be very difficult to attract young farmers. The local development strategies that are being laid down are the most important and sometimes the only tool that is being used in order to accommodate the many needs of the agricultural sector. As for work inclusion, social-wise, and the economies and their competitiveness. If we are expected to do more with less, there is an acute need to simplify the administrative burdens in connection with this development. It is also important that the agricultural sector is thought into all of the other policies that are being made at an EU level. Therefore, we must have the courage to stop this status quo in the agricultural sector that is undermining the important work done by farmers and ruin our planet. And we have to move toward a more fair, sustainable and attractive way of producing our foods. Thank you for listening.
Very, very much from you, understandably, the emphasis there on fair, sustainable, but also, as you rightly say at the beginning, to think of those small and medium-sized farms as well. Faustine, if I may move down the line, your thoughts?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Well, first of all, I would like to thank warmly the European Commission for inviting me to this very important and timely event. So yes, quite a tough question that you ask us to answer in 3 minutes. It's very important, I would say, to start by understanding where we need to go. In order to understand where we need to go, we need to understand where we are departing from. And there I would like to start with a key reminder, which is the cost of inaction, which we tend to forget in what we say when we focus on the cost of action, and how much this is going to cost from us to move to the system we're in today to the future one, where we want to go. But the cost of inaction is actually way bigger than the cost of action. And just to take a figure here, in France, there was this study quite recent that tried to analyze the cost of the broken food system in the country. And it estimated that it costs, on average, 19 billions of euros for the health-related expenses only. So this is the tip of the iceberg. This is huge. This is actually more than a third of what we're spending on the CAP annually at European level. And indeed, our unsustainable food system is making us sick. It is increasing the rise of non-communicable diseases. But it is also not only making consumers sick, it is actually making farmers themselves sick as well. And our unsustainable food system is also impacting our environment and climate, as it has been said before. It is a leading cause of deforestation. It impacts the air we breathe, the water we drink. It puts pressure on the soil, which are very much needed for farming. Just to highlight a figure here, around 60 to 70% of the EU soils are in unhealthy set state, according to EU figure. It is also impacting our biodiversity, which is also very much needed for farming, and is a contributor of climate change. But it is also true the other way around, as Commissioner Hansen has said before. As much as our food system is a great contributor of climate change, our farmers, and eventually our food security, is at risk. And this was actually made clear in the European Environmental Agency Climate Risk Assessment earlier this year, where it states that Europe is the fastest warming continent in the world, and that climate change is a severe risk to food security. And we need urgent action now, not tomorrow. But our food system, as the previous speaker was saying, is also socially broken. It is defined by stark inequalities within consumers. So we see the EU being split between general overconsumption and the reality of millions of citizens who are not able to afford a quality meal every second day. We overconsume animal proteins, which makes us heavily dependent on feed imports from non-EU countries and also fertilizers for cereals, which is also a big problem with strategic autonomy at the time of geopolitical uncertainties. Around 20% of the food that we produce in the EU is lost or wasted, while we know that some consumers are actually struggling. But we also see huge discrepancies in Europe among farm incomes, as it has been said, with many farmers who are struggling to break even. And generation renewal, as it was said, is a big challenge in European agriculture, and so is also gender equality. So it's clear that the status quo is not an option. And this was actually highlighted in the strategic dialogue that I had the pleasure to participate in. Time for change is now, just to quote verbatim what is in the report. We need to change our food system. Changing the CAP only, even if it's key as essential, is not going to be enough, that is clear. The CAP is a symptom, and it is not the disease itself. And at the end of the day, the CAP is a political choice about how we use the money and whether we use it to foster this transition or to keep status quo. We need to change the way we consume and produce food throughout the chain. It is deeply unfair to make farmers alone responsible for the burden of the changes that are necessary at system level. So all actors have to act and to change. And I would like to finish with what the strategic dialogue says. So the strategic dialogue is setting a good direction of travel and contains meaningful and robust recommendations. And here to name a few, but it's very important to bear in mind that the strategic dialogue consensus is a set of recommendations that go together. It's a balanced consensus that was reached, after 7 months of time and effort, spending together. But it is a consensus because it is a set of recommendations. It's a package. If we take some while not looking at the others, then the consensus falls. And I think this is very important to stress here. So what does the recommendations say? So first, a cap that is fit for purpose. What does that mean? That income support is limited to those who really need it. I think this is very important. That means, and we say it in the strategic dialogue report, moving away eventually from hectare-based payment, from area-based payments, and where environmental payments are strengthened. And indeed, for now, the cap is more part of the problem than part of the solutions. It is not fostering the transition that we need in the farming sector. It is unfair, with the 80% going to 20% of the farmers. Actually, also, direct payments get capitalized in the price of land, which means that this is a barrier for the entry of young farmers. And the Court of Auditor report in September highlighted that the CAP strategic plans are not in line or not ambitious enough to actually meet our environment and climate goals. We also need a proper implementation and enforcement of environmental and climate legislation. This is very important, and this is stressed in the dialogue itself as well. It refers explicitly to the Nature Restoration Law, to the Water Framework Directive, to the Nitrates Directive, to the Birds and Habitats Directive. We also need to strengthen farmers' position in the food value chain. This is also one of the big recommendations. We need to have a just transition mechanism in place for the most impacted, because yes, there will be people who will be impacted by the transition, but again, not acting now will make the situation even worse in the future. We need appropriate funding for nature restoration law. Nature is our biggest ally in the fight against climate change. We need farmers to work with nature. We should not force them to work against nature. And we need, and that's very important, to support change in consumption and support the trends towards more balanced diets and less animal proteins. And for that, we need to tackle what we call food environment, where healthy choice should become the sustainable choice by default. And there are also, of course, recommendations that are of very importance to me also on gender equality. And I would like to finish by saying that, and recognizing that challenges are high, yes, but not tackling them now will just make them bigger in the future. And as we say in English, when there is a will, there is a way. Stakeholders found a consensus just a few months ago. This was historic. This is now for decision makers to actually seize this unique opportunity and follow that path of hope. Thank you.
Faustine, thank you very much. Thank you. And you had Carsten nodding along with you at many times during your thoughts. Massimiliano, would you like to give us your thoughts finally before we open the floor for questions and open dialogue?
Thank you so much. I'm from Italy, so I'm going to talk in Italian. Ovviamente a nome del COPA ringrazio.
On behalf of COPA, I'd like to say thank you to the Commissioner Hansen, for this time we can have a debate and we can listen to one another. When I heard your words, I hear a vision which is very different to that of the previous Commission. I appreciate your ideas, your view of how to develop agriculture to benefit European farmers. I was glad to hear in the discussion so far just how much a focus farmers have now, and I am glad that we are starting to talk about agriculture as a strategic sector again. And I think COPA is one of the best placed organisations to express this idea and this vision that farmers have. As Mr. Bauscher said, we are in a difficult time, and Minister Nagy, thank you as well to you for what you've done over the past few months. It's been a difficult time in terms of the climate as well. The geopolitical situation certainly doesn't help, with war on Europe's doorstep. Let's not forget the effects of the Russia-Ukraine conflict that we're still feeling, the events in the Middle East, the potential impact of this on agriculture, and this continues. It's very difficult climate. And we have seen how central farmers have been over the past few years. In spite of the agricultural policies that have flanked the competitiveness policies and financial policies, farmers have fought, they have been able to survive despite all of the struggles. And now more than ever, we need a European Commission and a Commissioner and European policy that supports us and is at our side. We need to rise to the challenges, meet the needs of European consumers. These consumers are calling for animal proteins, they're calling for vegetable proteins, they're calling for balanced diets. That's what we need to provide via natural products, not lab-based products. This is what we want to promote as Copa Cogeca. We want to be at the forefront of the European agricultural vision for the next few years. That's why with all of the associations that are part of Copa, we have drafted a vision document, a forecasting document, which will become our proposal, which we want to bring to the Commissioner to try to shape the agricultural policies of the future. In the past few years, and I take personal responsibility for what I'm saying now, we have put techniques in front of policies. We thought that CAP was the way forward, but CAP is only a tool to achieve a goal. It is a way of achieving a target and implementing a policy. What we need now is to return to the negotiating table to speak together with the commissioners, Hansen and others, President von der Leyen, to try to reshape the agricultural policy within the European context and to make our continent just as highly performing as North America, South America, or even Asia. Now, when it comes to farmers' income as well, we need to remain competitive and productive. We must also promote innovation, push forward the green and digital transitions. We have set out 10 points, Commissioner. The first, as you reminded us, has to do with simplification and new ways of governance to allow farmers and agricultural cooperatives to take part in decision-making processes and provide their products on the market. Secondly, we want to strengthen farmers' contributions to the European sector, both in terms of promoting a more holistic agricultural model, an integrated model, which you referred to previously. We are very much at the forefront of the green transition, and we also want to develop our capacities within the bioeconomy sector as well. We thirdly want to strengthen, boost competitiveness and profitability of our companies to make agriculture, European agriculture, a global player. We need to support those operating in rural areas. The role of agriculture in each of the 27 member states is crucial. You couldn't imagine one of our countries without agriculture. It would be a desert, essentially. So we need to incorporate this into our strategy so that we can make sure there's a generational handover within agricultural companies. We can't let farming die out. This is a very important issue for many farmers who are trying to innovate, who are trying to adapt and remain competitive. Of course, we need to also place our consumers at the heart of our discussions as well and make sure that we stick to high standards, both in terms of animal proteins and vegetable products. Let's not forget that we hear arguments from all over saying that it's better to eat organic food, it's better to eat plant-based diet, but we can't do without animal proteins as well. So we need to continue supporting livestock farmers. They are farmers as well at the end of the day. We also need fair trading policies, especially in a context which is increasingly ambitious. So to conclude, we need a solid financial framework in the European budget on agricultural policies. We need robust policies within the CAP, and we need to be able to manage the risks, both in terms of market risks, global prices and so on, and also stabilizing our products when there's a threat of extreme weather events. And I would also like to urge for a debate involving all stakeholders, those who like agriculture and support it and those who are rather against agriculture, because we need to talk to everyone who, whatever their vision of agriculture is, whether they see it as part of the problem or not. Let me remind you it's very important what the Commissioner and Minister Nagy said. We are not part of the problem. We are the answer, the solution to the problem. So let me conclude by saying that now more than ever, as COPA, we are expecting from the European Commission that you would respond rapidly, and the European Union as a whole. It's a difficult time for us, and we are asking you all to act swiftly. We can't continue to go on struggling. We are told we need a more productive and competitive world, but it needs to be a sustainable world as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us the voice of COPA there, very clearly laying out what your priorities, your thoughts are, and absolutely an excellent point that everybody needs to be involved in this dialogue, whether you're to do with agriculture, like agriculture, or don't. Everybody needs to be together. I'm going to turn now to questions, so you can see the Slido QR code up on screen. If you have a question, please submit it now. And before we take the first question, there is actually somebody else to hear from, which we thought would be really quite nice to bring in now to maybe kick off our questions. And that is Stoyan Choikanov, who's from the EESC, the European Economic and Social Committee. Stoyan, where are you? Fabulous, thank you. Would you like to turn your microphone on? And I know you have a comment you'd like to address to the panel. Thank you. I think we can hear you, yes?
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, the Commissioner left, but Minister, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for being here. My name is Stoyan, and I'm a farmer from Bulgaria, but I'm here as a member of the European Economic and Social Committee. And actually, it was almost a year ago, on January 16, we voted an opinion about the future of the Common Agricultural Policy. And in this opinion, our committee launched the idea about repurposing the hectare-based payments. And then in May, in another opinion, we reaffirmed this suggestion to move away from the hectare-based payments, but in light of the future enlargement, because this is another elephant in the room for the farmers. Then it was taken on board from the strategic dialogue, and now we can see it's already articulated by the largest political party in the European Parliament that traditionally supports the farmers. So my question is toward the Commission, if as an executive, if you are working or if you can give us potential time horizon, if this idea is going to be taken and what is going to be the future for the farmers in this regard. Thank you.
Stoyan, thank you very much. Wolfgang, did you want to take that one?
Thank you very much. I have just seen already also the other questions that will come in. And there is a question about, which is related to this, who are now the good ones and who are the bad ones? Small and medium-sized farms are better than big farms. I think we do not pronounce ourselves on this, because they play both important roles in our society in terms of keeping our landscapes, providing food security. But the question is legitimate whether all of them need the same public support. And I think where we have broad agreement is that whatever the scale of a farmer is, to the extent that he delivers ecosystem services, he should get a proper remuneration. What we are talking about, or what you are talking about, Stoyanov, is the question of the income support. And there, I just would like to say two things. Firstly, I've read very carefully the conclusions of the strategic dialogue. But the strategic dialogue does not talk about phasing out direct payments, area-based direct payments. It talks about non-digressive area-based payments should be, or the end of them should be considered. Non-digressive area-based payments. So that's the first question, it's the first point. Secondly, even in our existing system, we have made huge redistribution from big farms to small and medium-sized farms in the context of the redistributive payments. Per year, 4 billion euros are distributed from bigger ones to smaller ones. And my last point is, if you are talking about the end of area-based payments, I just would like to recall that most ecosystem services payments are area-based payments. They are also area-based payments. How do you want to remunerate farmers that reduce pesticides? You link it to the land. So I think I hear very well all these questions about area-based payments. They are not perfect. There is the issue of the fair distribution. But what are the alternatives? You have 6 million farms. So how do you decide who gets how much money? For what performance? Will this be simpler? I think these are the questions we have to ask ourselves. So I think this discussion is open, certainly it is open, but I just would like to warn about some simplistic visions of what the alternatives to area-based payments are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Faustine, you look like you would like to come in on that. And can I just ask the moderators, could you send the questions through now, please? If you could open the questions for us so we can see. Thank you. But Faustine, would you like to pick up on that?
Yeah, just to come back on the reference to the strategic dialogue and what it says or it doesn't, and also the dynamic of the discussion there. The dialogue is not differentiating between the big ones or the bad ones and saying that the big ones are bad, the small ones are good. Or it talks about retargeting the payments, the income support to the ones who need it most. And then we need to ask ourselves, what are the criteria that we should use in order to identify those who need it most? And that's where hectares are not necessarily the best way forward. We could think, actually the dialogue refers to this task force that should think a bit further about how to identify these criteria. We could think of looking at household incomes, for instance. But what is clear is that we cannot continue with a system where basically by principle we give the money to everyone and then exclude some of them. We need to target to those who are actually struggling. And then, indeed, there is another part, which are the results-oriented environmental payments, which, are based on environmental criteria. But that's another part of the recommendations within the Common Agricultural Policy.
This one, you were definitely very keen to speak on that one.
Igen, mert ki kell mondani, hogy
I can tell you that on these subsidies, these payments which are based on, area-based payments, these can cause problems in Europe if we diverge from this. Our current system allows us to differentiate. Small-scale farms should receive more support. Family-based farms also receive more, whereas bigger farms should receive less subsidies. So we need to encourage this approach, and we need to make sure that soil quality is respected, environmental factors should be respected if this system is working well. Otherwise, we could put food security in Europe at risk because farmers might use their land for other purposes or have fields which would not be cultivated otherwise. And we see this in negotiations with other countries as well. We have the rules that are in the Green Deal, and we ask farmers to respect the Green Deal and its terms, but we're not asking for the same thing from farms in third countries that we import from. Why do we not claim the same quality as we are calling for in Europe? If we change our support system, the consequences will be serious. of course, there is waste. There are people who don't have access to food, so there's a mismatch there. We've seen a survey being carried out in Germany, and people were asked to respond to questions such as what influences your food purchases. And people going into shops were saying that, well, I buy a product that comes from my country, I'm very aware of environmental issues and so on. But when we actually analysed the contents of the baskets, it was basically low prices that was the main factor for consumers. That was, in fact, the only criterion at the end of the day. People can't live without depending on farmers. In the strategic dialogue, well, lots of people took part in that. And it's clear that we rely on farmers. We couldn't continue to exist without them. We need quality food and we need a great deal of it. And that is the challenge that we are going to have to rise to.
Let's move on to some of the specific points and the specific questions that have been raised. We can't actually see the questions again. If you were able just to send them through to the monitor at the front. Perfect, thank you. I'm going to take the most popular from the room first off, and that is actually looking at small and medium farms. Small and medium farms provide a better services to the environment, so what sort of support? Now, this is something that has come out in the strategic dialogue, not necessarily phrased in that way, but in needing to look after small and medium-sized farms. This person thinks that they provide better services to the environment. You may wish to pick up on that as well. But how would you like to support small and medium-sized farms? Veronica, would you like to take that one?
Tak já děkuji moc za...
Thank you for this question. I'm in a bit of a disadvantage because we do not have a clear-cut position on this topic in the newly created parliamentary committee. But I will just provide you with my own personal opinion or what I think would gather support. I'm from the Czech Republic. In the Czech Republic, we have a very different structure because on average, the size of a farm is 16 hectares in the European Union, while in my country it's 125 hectares, which is a consequence of collective farming from the past. So about 80% of all subsidies go to 10% of the farms. We now have redistribution of payments, and despite everything, 500-hectare farms cover about half of the soil. But the small farms are viable. What I just want to say is that our structure is very different. Now, how do we intend to help them? Help them in general, because financial terms are something that we will discuss in our committee. But of course, we are speaking about administrative burden and obstacles. And I think that when we speak about small farms, we should give them slightly more favorable conditions in this respect. They could then save their money. It would be easier for them to breathe. So much for myself. I think that I can agree with what my colleague said about payments. Agriculture is a very conservative sector, so I warn against any revolutions. We have income in agriculture amounting to about 60% of the income in other sectors in the European Union. So direct payments, I think we should retain, but a part of the payments should be transformed into some compensation mechanism for the green measures that we want the farmers to adopt. So this is a clear trend. Another thing, and we've heard that here today as well, the potential enlargement of the European Union. In the case of Ukraine exceeding, about 30% of the budget would go in that direction. So if we speak about the cut of subsidies and digression, I think that we won't be able to do without it. Thank you.
Massimiliano, can I bring you in and talk about small farms, small and medium-sized farms? The question is asking what more support could they get or should they get? With your experience from COPA of knowing the small and medium farms, just a few words from you on where the support would be really useful. And is it mainly on the administrative burden that more support needs to be given? Would you say that was the priority?
Ma forse io sono la persona meno adatta a rispondere.
Well, maybe I'm not the best place to answer that question.
Stavo dicendo forse.
I was just saying maybe I'm not the best placed to answer that question. In COPA, we do have very small micro enterprises, small, medium and large companies, and we have to represent and protect the interests of all of them. I think that within the current CAP, there are all the tools available that are used well to provide the right kind of guarantees, both to tiny and to huge companies. In some countries, we have capping, but in any case, the instruments allow all companies to benefit within this model from policies which would support agriculture at different levels in all different countries. I'd like to take a different angle. The average income of farmers at the moment is under 60% that of entrepreneurs in other sectors. And I say entrepreneurs because farmers are entrepreneurs. Let's not forget that. So if support were to be provided, this would be an incentive. An incentive-based approach linked to income would be welcome because it's less than 60% on average of our colleagues in other sectors. Very often in the European context, we discuss the agricultural budget as part of the overall EU budget. It's true that in Brussels, we've talked about under 30%, but if we look at the overall GDP of the 27 countries, it's only 0.4% of the GDP of the 27 member states. It's basically nothing at all. So I would like to call upon the member states to do something in addition, not just for their farmers, but for all of society, for consumers. I think it's important to invest in our common agricultural land. Incentives need to be provided via models that put the economy, the market first, that keep our natural resources and protect them, and that ensure social responsibility. I think we could do this, for example, by creating funds using the CAP, the European Social Fund, the EIB funds, and we could have a debate about this with the Commission, Parliament and Council. When the President is here to talk to us, we could encourage them to launch a debate on how to make use of all the tools we already have available that perhaps we haven't maximized on thus far for our small and our large companies. I don't think there would be anyone who would say that they have made the most of all of the tools available. And I think we need to look at every type of company from small to large.
I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to try and get through as many questions as possible. If I could encourage you just a few words and keep your answers short for us so that we can hear lots of different views. A question now about the health of people, healthy food, sustainable food, but also healthy food. Carsten, I'm going to direct that one to you, as I know that that's an area you feel very passionately about. So how do you ensure that the policies also help promote healthy food, healthy diets as well as ensuring sustainable lifestyles for farmers and sustainable environmental practices.
Et godt spørgsmål, vil jeg sige.
That's a very good question. I think it's very important that we have a transition in the agricultural sector so that the ecology becomes a larger part of it. We've seen, and maybe this is more a Danish problem than it is an European problem, because when we give area-based subsidies, then we also give to less good soil that is not actually suited for farming. So if we have to change the subsidies, the area-based subsidies have to still be there, but we also have to take into consideration that we do have ecological farms and that we support sustainability. Also maybe look at how many employees they have, what sort of level are their wages on. But we have to look at these things because in Denmark we have a lot of places in which the farming is actually destructive to nature, and the climate makes it essential for us to look at these things not in the long term, but here and now. This sector will have to deal with this as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not fluent in Danish, unfortunately. So, yes, on healthy food, and also to build on what the minister said about the discrepancies that we see between what consumers buy and what they want. And I think that this is actually putting let's say the finger on the complexity of food environments, and that is why we need to tackle food environment if we want to help consumers make the healthy choice. And we should stop with that narrative of responsible consumers, because there are many parameters that are actually influencing consumers in their choices, be it sociocultural, be it political, but also economic, of course. What we need is to make sure that the sustainable choice, the healthy choice, become the choice by default. And it's a set of policies through a system-based approach that will help then consumers eventually be enabled to actually make that sustainable choice. And part of it is, again, in the strategic dialogue recommendations.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, all of the questions that we're getting very much are coming from points from the strategic dialogue, very much so. There's a question just a moment ago about digitalisation. How to support, what measures are needed to support digitalisation of EU agriculture. Also, farmers' adoption of digital farming tools. Just a couple of words. Who feels very passionately about? Yes, please go. Yeah.
Ma io credo che
Yes, I would say that as farmers, in the last 100 years, we've seen a fourth revolution. We had the GMO revolution, we had the mechanical industrial revolution. Think of how many people, when they saw that plows were being replaced with machines. Now we have very high-tech farming, and now we're looking at a demographic, and then there was a demographic boom, and now we're dealing with the digital revolution. And farmers need to have tools to ensure that using data, they can ensure that they're more and more high-performing, and that they keep their practices sustainable. So they can use data to use fewer inputs to make sure that their resources are used most effectively as they could be. And we need the tools to digitalize certain aspects of agriculture to make our agricultural sector both more high performing and more sustainable. And then there's the role of R&D as well. In the European Parliament, we've heard a great deal of debates about novel techniques, and in the Agri-Fish Council this came up as well. We are also expecting to have tools that will help us respond to climate change better. How can we hope to combat it without digital and R&D tools? That's what we need to focus on. And a last point. We need to look at the networks that we have. Many agricultural systems don't have the networks to exchange information or data with other agricultural businesses. So we need the infrastructure to be in place for that as well. That's an important facet, and that's something that the Commission can work on as well.
All day dedicated to that. I can see you both want to come in on digital areas. Okay, so I'm very conscious of time. What I would like to do is just take no more than 1 minute from all of you, and maybe you want to talk on digital here, but 1 minute to give everyone an idea of what you would like in their minds as they walk out of this room this morning. They can't take more than 1 minute in their minds. So just one thought. What's the most important thing you'd like everyone to take out of this room, Veronica?
Tak já děkuji. Já vlastně jsem na
Thank you. In my last comment, I said that we need to find a compromise between the economy, social affairs, and environmental issues. That is crucial. But I will follow up to something that I've heard here, not only on modern technologies. I won't be here anymore in the afternoon. And this is a task not only for our committee. In many rural areas, we do not have a very good coverage, so we can't really change very much. And this is a very important role for us politicians. And as mentioned, agriculture is very conservative, and modern technologies can be introduced not as easily as elsewhere, because, for example, some of the older generations have problems with that, and we have to provide them with assistance. This is an area where we really can provide help and a helping hand in general. The Parliament in its previous period adopted very good legislation. I was a rapporteur for that, but this report has been in the Council for a year now, and I would like to ask for your help if you can do something about it. And of course, if we want to have pesticide-free and new technologies, we have to adopt them. Thank you.
A digitalizáció több szempontból is.
Thank you. Yes, digitalization is very important for farmers. It will help them to complement their physical work. It will ease the transition from generation to generation, and it can also help with traceability, managing and tracking animals, and food security. So digitalization does play an important role in the world of agriculture. We do have several tools that can help us in this context. Tools that can help smooth the digital transition and to help agriculture become greener. They can help us to manage pesticide use, for example. So the green transition will be easier overall thanks to digitalization, allowing us to really have a revolution within the world of agriculture. We need to promote digitalization in order to do this. Our farmers need the necessary training, for example, to really make the most of it.
I think we're going to go into this in so much more depth as we go on over the next few days. Wolfgang, I'll come to you last, if I may. Carsten, I'll come to you next. So just one thought in a minute of what you would like people to leave this room in the forefront of their minds.
I think we're quite different in Europe. I think we're quite different in our development, also within the agricultural sector. And I think a lot about digitalization, because the last time I went to see a farm, I sat in a tractor that was almost a laboratory. You could see all, hear all, decide all, and it was on the millimeter decided what quantity of pesticide would go into this little piece of land. And this is something that research is doing giant advances within. And I think that once we have this, we will no longer be farming areas that are not really farmable. So digitalization of the agricultural sector is not a dream anymore, it's reality.
Stefan has also been on exactly the same tractor. He was certainly nodding and enjoying the memory of that tractor. Faustine, if I could come to you, just a final thought for everyone.
Yes. So a final thought divided in three, if you allow me. So first, time for change is now. And I heard from the chair of the Agri Committee here that we need to compromise. But I think it's very important that we bear in mind that we cannot compromise with biophysical realities. We cannot compromise with climate change. We cannot compromise with biodiversity decline. That is very, very important. I've also heard a lot about we need to be competitiveness. Well, we need to ask ourselves competitiveness for what? Competitiveness is a tool, not an end in itself. And as blunt as it might sound, as naive as it may sound, there is no economy and no competitiveness on a dead planet. We need to be competitive in sustainability. We need to be the best and the fastest to move to a continent where agri and food production and consumption are in line with planetary boundaries and are sustainable. It should be a race to the top, not a race to the bottom, and certainly not equal to the regulation. And last, I would like to stress again that at a time of heavy polarization, we managed in a diverse group of stakeholders to find a historic consensus. This was not an easy job, but we did it. This is historic. Just the fact that it's a consensus is historic, but not only the fact that it's a consensus, the fact that it's also a meaningful way towards a sustainable future. And again, this is a unique opportunity for decision makers, and they should not forget about it, and they should definitely seize it.
You said earlier it took 7 months. Yep. Absolutely. You said earlier it took 7 months, as if that was a long time. I think there'll be a lot of people who would say 7 months to come to such a huge agreement. Well, a lot of hours. I can't imagine how many hours. Massimo Lagno, just a final thought from you that you would like people to leave this room with.
Sì, grazie.
Thank you.
We have to understand what to be a farmer. Everything knows to be a farmer, but the real farmer is the farmer. So we want to be on the focus of the Commission. We want to be a part of the evolution of our life. In 2050, we are 10 billion of people around the world, so we have to produce more, we have to be sustainable. And who can do this? The farmers. So we are ready, but we need the right instruments for preserve the natural resources, yes, but we have to do also more competitive on the market. Instead, other farmers around the world are on the markets and we are outside of the market. And I can't accept this. And I want to work for the future, a bright future for the European farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Final thought from you, Wolfgang.
Thank you very much. I think many of you are traveling through Europe, and you see the beauty and diversity of Europe compared to other parts of the world. And it's highly related to agriculture. We have small farms, we have big farms, a huge diversity who have characterized our rural areas, rural life, traditions. And imagine that the decrease of farmers continues at the pace which we have seen over the last years. I remember between 2010 and 2020, we have lost 3 million farms, 800 farms a day. If this is such a great business, why do we lose all these farmers?
You certainly have support from your fellow panelists and a big smile there at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, if you remember, we had a graphic recorder with all doing some pictures, drawing, and some thoughts of some of the things that have been discussed. So if you would like to turn around and see what Valerie has done for us. So there we go, it's just behind you. Agriculture is a way of life. Ecology must become part of agriculture. Big banner there with competitiveness, sustainability, digitalization, and we can see some of those points that we had echoed right at the very beginning from the Commissioner. Simplify farmers' lives, fair incomes, stable prices, and the new vision. I have to say, I particularly like the tractor. That one doesn't look like it has a laboratory on board. But maybe we can imagine a more high-tech tractor as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I think lots of different views, lots of very similar views, and everyone very open to having that dialogue. Please thank our first panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before we break for coffee, let me just tell you what we have outside for you in the exhibition. We do have lots of different stands for you. I would suggest that if you see a stand you want to talk to, you do it now, because we will be changing them throughout the days. So not all of them are there for the 3 days. But I will just mention for now that we do have the New Farm Sustainability Data Network. That's out there at the moment. We also have Mission Soil with various stands from the Commission that is there for a conversation. So we're going to take half an hour for a break. So if you're watching us online now, we'll be back in half an hour. We will be looking at other farming methods and practices with your moderator, Anya Sitharam, who will be here to take you through that one. So, ladies and gentlemen, and online as well, we will see you in half an hour. Thank you.